Mayday. Alpha calling Mayday, this is Coast Guard Com, State Kodiak, over. Coast Guard Com, State Kodiak, this is the Ocean Bounty, 90-foot power scale. We're out in the middle of the Gulf here. The land bearing is 13505.5, 3044.7.1. We're taking water on in the engine room. Engine room's half full of water. And we're trying to get it pumped out, but we might have to evacuate, over. Ocean Bounty, this is Coast Guard Com, State Kodiak. What type of survival gear do you have on board, over? Yeah, we have a life raft and we have survival suits. We're getting into the survival suits now, but we're still trying to pump out. Still trying to pump out. We got the life raft down, survival suits out. Yeah, this is the Ocean Bounty. We're starting to lose power. We're losing power. We're going to lose this radio shortly. Get a chopper out here, okay? Your position one more time. 13504. 30450. We're going down.
The crew of the Ocean Bounty made it. They communicated essential information to the Coast Guard. And even in the Gulf of Alaska, the modern search and rescue system was able to save their lives. Some people might say they were lucky, but there's a lot more skill than luck involved in surviving an emergency at sea. Today's survival and communications equipment make your odds of surviving higher than they have ever been before. But the equipment is only as good as you are. You've got to know how to use it. One of the most vital pieces of equipment in any marine emergency is your radio. We're going to take a look at the right way to use your radio in a crisis and learn what kinds of assistance this equipment can provide if you use it correctly. Modern VHF and single sideband radio equipment represent key elements of a global search and rescue system that coordinates military and civilian vessels, aircraft, and satellites to provide worldwide response capability. Designated distress, safety, and calling channels within the VHF and single sideband radio frequency spectra create a monitored distress and safety system that makes it much safer to live or work at sea today than ever before. As long as you're equipped with the right radio gear, the search and rescue system allows you to summon help in seconds from virtually any spot on the globe. What kind of radio equipment do you need?
VHF radio range is generally said to be line of sight. Channel 16 is the designated distress and calling frequency for VHF radio operators. If you operate up to 100 miles offshore, you need a single sideband unit that broadcasts and receives frequencies within the 2 to 4 megahertz band, including channel 2182, the international distress and safety frequency. If you operate more than 100 miles offshore, your single sideband should be capable of transmitting and receiving on the frequencies from 4 to 23 megahertz that permit you to communicate with a Coast Guard radio station in your area. To make them usable for the longest possible period during an emergency, radios should be mounted as high as possible, generally on brackets attached to the wheelhouse overhead. They should be powered by an emergency power supply that is also located as high as possible. The emergency battery should be connected to the vessel's main power supply for charging, but a battery isolator device should be installed between the two systems to prevent the emergency power from being drained if the main power system is submerged. The emergency power supply should be capable of supplying full power transmissions for at least 3 hours. Single sideband transceivers can be equipped with automatic radio telephone alarm devices that transmit the international radio telephone alarm signal. More penetrating than voice transmissions, this two-tone alternating signal is designed to attract the attention of radio operators and warn them that someone is about to broadcast a distress message. The auto alarm can be used at any time and is especially effective during the 3-minute silent periods at every hour and every half hour when no routine traffic is permitted on the distress frequency. There should be an instruction card summarizing radio operation and distress procedures posted near each radio operating station. The distress channels should be readily identifiable day or night. Commercial quality radios like these permit you to tune the emergency channels at a single keystroke. All vessels are required to guard the distress frequencies whenever their radios are operating and when they are not otherwise engaged in radio communications. This VHF set can prioritize channel 16 and override other frequencies whenever there is traffic on the distress and calling channel. That way you can stand by on a working channel and still be on the alert for distress messages. Large commercial vessels are required to monitor the distress frequencies all the time. This practice ensures that a maximum number of stations will be listening at any given time, so that your distress call has a high probability of being heard as soon as you make it.
But sometimes it's what you don't say that can save your life. Every vessel should file a sailing plan with a responsible party ashore that lists your intended route, expected times of arrival in port, and a daily communication schedule. The law requires that anyone who has reason to suspect that a vessel may have been lost to report that fact to a responsible authority, like the United States Coast Guard. A sailing plan could save your life if someone reports that you have missed a port call or missed your radio schedule, and the Coast Guard has some idea of where to find you. But that's a long shot. The best use of your radio gear and the best way to obtain help in an emergency is to take advantage of the International Distress and Safety System at the first sign of trouble.
Never ignore a call for help. Everyone afloat shares a responsibility for the safety of other mariners. If you hear a distress call, be ready to respond immediately. Just imagine yourself as the vessel in distress. There are 3 priority calls that always take precedence over general communications. Mayday is the phonetic pronunciation of the French word that means help me. The term Mayday identifies messages pertaining to vessels or persons threatened by grave and imminent disaster and requiring immediate assistance. A Mayday call always deserves top priority. Use the Mayday signal to report emergencies that threaten the entire vessel or medical emergencies that represent an immediate threat to someone's life. Pon-pon is the urgency signal that identifies messages pertaining to vessels or persons in jeopardy. It ranks second in priority to Mayday. If you hear an urgency signal, copy the information for later reference. You may be called upon to relay the information to others. If the situation becomes a distress, you could be called upon to assist. An example of when to use the urgency signal is to obtain medical advice from the Coast Guard for a patient whose life is not in imminent danger. Sécurité is the safety signal. It identifies messages pertaining to navigational hazards or bad weather. In terms of importance, it ranks behind Mayday and PON, yet ahead of any routine communications. Whenever your radio is turned on and not actually in use on another frequency, keep the receiver tuned to the appropriate distress and calling channel, either VHF channel 16 or single sideband channel 2182. If you're tuned to 2182, you're required to observe the silent periods for 3 minutes immediately after the hour and after the half hour. If you hear a Mayday call, listen carefully and copy down the vessel's name and call sign, its position, the number of persons on board, and the nature of the distress, as well as any other details about its size or description. Do not answer the call immediately. Give the Coast Guard or some other agency that is trained and equipped to deal with emergencies a chance to answer first. If no one else responds within a minute, you are responsible for answering the distress call. Contact the vessel and confirm the information conveyed in the distress message. Use your own radio to relay the Mayday call to the authorities. Reassure the crew. Let them know that you'll stand by on their frequency until help arrives. Keep in mind that if you are the vessel best able to respond to the emergency, or if you are requested to do so by the Coast Guard or some other authority, you bear an obligation to assist until you are released from duty, although you should do nothing that endangers your own vessel. When a distress call is received by the Coast Guard, by a government radio station, or by some other search and rescue agency, the information is relayed to a Coast Guard operations center that makes a determination about what to do next.
And today, search and rescue at sea is organized on a worldwide basis through international treaties. and each operations center can mobilize whatever military or civilian aircraft and vessels are best able to assist the casualty.
If you are in distress, you can use any means at your disposal to attract attention. Although your radio is usually your best signaling device because of its long range and two-way voice capability, a signal is anything that makes you bigger, brighter, or different from your surroundings. The crew of a vessel in distress has to act fast and make the right decisions. In conditions like these, your only hope is your ability to alert someone who can help you in a hurry. Used properly, a combination of VHF and single sideband radio equipment enables you to contact rescue authorities from virtually anywhere on Earth and convey crucial information about your position, the nature of your distress, and the condition of your crew. Once the initial distress message has been conveyed, radios and other signaling devices permit response units to home in on your position with ever-improving speed and accuracy.
Rescue agencies would much rather get a distress message early than to learn about a casualty only after it's too late to help the survivors, even if it means they have to cancel a rescue operation that proves unnecessary. As soon as you recognize that a potential emergency exists aboard your vessel, make radio contact and let someone else know that you're in trouble. Don't let pride, panic, or confusion cause you to wait until trouble becomes a crisis.
The initial contact doesn't have to be a full-blown distress call. It can be a simple warning to a nearby vessel or a shore station that you may have a problem and that you're going to investigate. If you wait until the crisis stage, you may not have time to convey vital information, or you may have lost power and not be able to communicate at all. The rule is simple and should never be broken. When in doubt, communicate.
All else being equal, utilizing one of the designated distress frequencies is your best bet in a crisis. But all things are not always equal. There may be numerous factors that make other frequencies better, including your location, the time of day, atmospheric conditions, and whether or not there are other vessels in the vicinity.
It's up to each captain or radio operator to maintain a communication strategy that is updated watch by watch and ensures that a distress call is broadcast on a channel that gives it the highest probability of being heard. Advise your crew about the best distress channels and make sure the channels are listed on the radio procedures placard that should be posted near your communications gear. In a real emergency, you may have to depend on someone else to make the call that saves your life.
When it's time to make a distress call, act immediately. Pick the best channel. If there's other traffic on the radio, break in. Remain calm and be certain that your initial transmission provides all necessary information. You may not get a second chance. Now, here's what a Mayday call should sound like.
Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. This is the Kittiwake. The Kittiwake, the Kittiwake. Whiskey Yankee Romeo 5026. Mayday, this is the Kittiwake. 1 mile south of Possession Point. Over.
Mayday, Kittiwake. This is Coast Guard Seattle. What is the nature of your distress? Over.
Coast Guard, this is the Kittiwake. We've struck an underwater object. We're taking on water rapidly. We're sinking. We're sinking. 3 adults on board. We're sinking. Over.
Kittiwake, this is Coast Guard Seattle. Confirm your position is 1 mile south of Possession Point. Over.
Coast Guard, this is the Kittiwake. That's affirmative. We're a 40-foot fishing vessel, red hull, with a white house. We need help. We need help now.
Seattle Search, Group Port Angeles. This is Group Seattle Sartell. Roger. The fishing vessel Kittiwake is taking on water 1 mile south of Possession Point with 3 persons on board. Request an aircraft launch from Port Angeles. I diverted Coast Guard 41388. Request the aircraft's ETA. Roger. 20 minutes. Group Seattle clear.
Kittiwake, this is Coast Guard Seattle. Skipper, we have launched boats and aircraft to your position. They should arrive in approximately 30 minutes. Skipper, if you haven't done so already, make sure everyone on board is wearing a life preserver. Now there's some additional information that I need from you. Do you have a life raft on board? Over.
Roger, Coast Guard. This is the Kittiwake. We have a 4-man life raft with flares and provisions. We also have an EPIRB. Over.
It's always possible that someone can hear the distress message but can't call you back. If you don't get a response, continue broadcasting and pausing to listen for a return call. If you can't get a response on the first channel you use, try a different one and keep transmitting as long as you can.
You may not feel like talking when the water's rising around you, but these details are critical in helping the Coast Guard mount an effective rescue. Be advised that these additional questions speed the response and enable rescue units to do a better job of helping you. The radio operator doesn't fly the helicopter or pilot the rescue vessel that's been dispatched to help you. As soon as the Coast Guard has determined that the situation is serious enough to justify mobilizing a search, the duty officer launches rescue units while the radio operator is talking to you.
The modern search and rescue system works, and agencies like the United States Coast Guard are always ready to come to your assistance. If you go to sea today, the Marine Radio Telephone Distress and Safety System is yours to use, but you must activate the system. Rescue operations can be dangerous. They place the lives of the aircraft and vessel crews in jeopardy. They're also very expensive and occupy limited search and rescue resources. Never make a distress call unless you have a real emergency.
Your radio is your best means of obtaining assistance in a crisis, but you have to use it effectively. Channel 16 is the designated VHF distress frequency for vessels operating near shore. Channel 2182 is the international distress and safety frequency for vessels operating on the high seas. Maintain a communication strategy. Post a distress radio procedures instruction placard near your radios and train your crew in how to call for help. If you are in distress, make radio contact at the first sign of trouble. Remain calm. Pick the best channel and be sure your initial transmission includes your name, call sign, and position. Be prepared to answer additional questions when someone responds. Rescue agencies like the Coast Guard need as much information as possible to mount an effective response. Establish a communication schedule and remain in contact as long as possible. Remember, if you utilize it well, the modern search and rescue system can provide assistance at virtually any spot on the globe.